Up next on U.S. Bank Business Watch, presented by the Business Courier. Unique leadership advice from the top. A new concept in banking with a goal to get you back in the door. And get them while they're hot and still available. New apartments now open on Over the Rhine. U.S. Bank Business Watch is next. Good morning and welcome to U.S. Bank Business Watch. I'm Peg Rasconi. Leaders, are they born, made, or just a byproduct of working at P&G? On the Business Courier front page centerpiece this week, pulling the best from CEOs. Former P&Gers are in high-level leadership roles all over the world. Jim Stengel is one of them. 6 years ago, Stengel made a move most people would consider unthinkable. He left his job as global marketing officer at Procter & Gamble to start his own firm, consulting with businesses on how to reach their true potential. Stengel then wrote a best-selling book, Grow, gave a TED Talk on business ideals, and traveled the world working with companies as diverse as Hyatt, Visa, and Luxottica. Some of the leadership principles he lives by include: everyone has weaknesses, manage those weaknesses and focus on strengths. It's critical to know yourself and build a team that complements your skills. And at the best firms, it's all about the people. Well, Stengel still lives in Cincinnati and recently sat down with Business Courier editor Rob Dahlmeyer to talk about how he helps companies and what it takes to be a top leader in today's super competitive economy. Rob joins Business Watch producer Kelly Leon in the studio with more on what he found out. Guys.
Thanks, Peg. So, Rob.
Yes.
Why Jim? You spent a couple hours with him.
Yes, I did. Well, he'd left 6 years ago. He left maybe the top marketing job on the planet. I mean, yeah. P&G's the #1 advertisers. He was their global marketing officer. So at the height of his career, he leaves 6 years ago, decides, I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to talk to companies about really getting to the highest ideals of what they can be, the best they can be. And he's spent the last 6 years writing a book, New York Times best-selling book, and traveling the world to talk to CEOs and companies, working with them to fix what's broken and help them sort of bloom into the best versions of themselves.
And he stayed here in Cincinnati. That's pretty cool that he's still
Yep.
Working here. So P&G has this niche, it seems, for creating leaders and then them going out to major companies.
Absolutely. There's a ton of them even in town. We just had a big story the other day. Gina Drosos at SureX up in Mason, they just got an enormous contract the other day. She came from P&G. But the list goes on and on and on. And we talked a lot about what P&G, in the story, about what P&G does when they bring, they get good people. So it's not like they're just getting goofballs like me. They're getting good people in, right? But they have a very rigorous way. They say that they're always learning and training at the same time. Their bosses there do both.
Yeah.
You're not just a boss. You're an employee and a boss.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting, and the whole idea of being really clear on the goals that the CEO has for the company. Any surprises that Jim brought out that you weren't expecting?
It was really interesting to me that so many CEOs have problems firing people. I mean, that is a pretty important job. Yeah. All the talent in the world, we're not going to bat 1,000 as far as the hires we bring in. One bad hire can ruin a company. He said that to me several times. But CEOs would almost always rather do something else. They're human. Nobody wants to fire people. But there's nothing more important sometimes for a CEO than to say, you know what, you can't be here anymore because our company can't work. So I think that was the biggest surprise. I just always sort of assumed CEOs just knew that.
Yeah. Well, it was a great story. I hope people read the full story. I took a lot away from it. So
Good.
Thank you.
Sure.
And Peg, we'll send it back to you.
All right, thanks Kelly and Rob. And again, you can read the full story in the print edition. It looks just like that. Well, the future of P&G's Duracell batteries is uncertain. P&G leaders say they'd like to split off Duracell into a standalone company, but instead might end up merging with another corporation or being sold outright. That's what happened with other high-profile P&G brands in recent years. CEO A.G. Lafley recently revealed his intent to exit the battery business when P&G reported net profit was about $2 billion for the first quarter of the fiscal year. That's down 34% from a year ago. In the last 5 years, the University of Cincinnati's share of funding from the National Institutes of Health has been cut roughly in half. The reasons range from competition for funds to across-the-board federal cuts known as sequestration. But Dr. William Ball, the man in charge of UC's enormous research engine, says he has a plan for recovery. Ball says the future of research at UC involves a shift away from federal funds to a more diversified mix that includes industry.
Our universities have an obligation to the community to support economic growth and development. And for that reason, it's becoming increasingly important for universities to collaborate and interact with industry partners in order to help support that growth.
Ball says another reason it's important to collaborate with industry is these are the organizations that will ultimately employ his students so they may continue their research. Exciting news from Cincinnati Children's Hospital Medical Center. Researchers here are marking a scientific breakthrough that could lead to a way to grow replacement organs for people who need transplants. Using stem cells and genetic engineering, they have figured out a way to grow human intestinal tissue in mice. That could eliminate the risk of transplant rejection and the lifelong expense of medication that organ recipients now take. Macys is opening stores in the Middle East, the first time a Macys will locate overseas. The Cincinnati-based retailer is opening both Macys and Bloomingdale's brand stores in Abu Dhabi, United Arab Emirates in 2018. The 200,000 square foot stores will offer merchandise and store experience similar to each brand's offerings in the U.S. while being sensitive to local preferences. Northside Bank and Trust Company is stepping outside its comfort zone in a few ways with its plans to open a Hyde Park branch. It's the first time in a decade that the bank has opened a branch. It's also the first branch ever to be added east of Interstate 71 for the 123-year-old bank. And the branch will look far different than any of its other locations, partly with the goal of luring people back in.
Fewer and fewer people visit the bank branches these days, due to all the technology, which we've also embraced. So they don't come in quite as often. We're always looking for ways to attract them back into the branch. And frankly, there's times where our clients want to see their banker, especially at a community bank like Northside.
Among the new features in the Hyde Park branch, a coffee bar, free Wi-Fi, and dog bowl so customers feel welcome to bring in their pets. The location is in the old U.S. Bank building on Madison Road near Bonefish Restaurant. The branch is expected to open in December. A vacant over-the-Rhine building that used to be owned by Warner Brothers Film Studio may be turned into apartments or commercial space. Known as the Film Building, this site on Central Parkway is owned by the city. Urban Sites, a developer that has put in more than 400 apartments in Over-the-Rhine, is considering turning it into highly desirable office space or 42 market-rate apartments. The building is 2 blocks away from the Cincinnati streetcar line and has views of OTR and Findlay Market. Another formerly vacant building is now a hot commodity in Over-the-Rhine in the apartment market. Park West opened last week and is an apartment project that has merged 2 historic properties. The units include hardwood floors, exposed brick, washers and dryers, balconies, and lots of light, as well as ample parking. The building is also within steps of Washington Park.
There are 2 buildings. One was built in 1870, the other 1880. One was abandoned for decades, the one on the western side. This one was actually occupied, about 50%, but it was in very sad shape. The leaks, the roof leaked, the bricks, everything was in sad shape.
The project was developed by Grandin Properties and Hudipole Construction in partnership with the Cincinnati Center City Development Corporation. Well, up next on U.S. Bank Business Watch, we'll show you the most expensive house for sale in the tri-state. And which local suburbs made the list of the best suburban neighborhoods in the nation? Some news now that's getting a lot of attention on the Business Courier website and social media sites. The most expensive single-family home listed for sale in Greater Cincinnati just dropped its price. The home, a nearly 20,000 square foot mansion in Indian Hill, has one of the highest list prices of all time in the region. It started at $7.7 million in May, and the asking price has now fallen to a mere $6.95 million. It sits on more than 10 acres and has 23 rooms and a hand-carved marble fireplace imported from a European castle. A new restaurant will be under construction soon in Coleraine Township, and it will overlook a lake on 10 wooded acres. Snow's Lake Lodge Restaurant and Tavern will be built on Dry Ridge Road. It will seat about 250 people inside with room for another 150 people on a patio that will jut out over the lake. Snow's Spring Lake is a former pay fishing lake. Melanie Healy, who is believed to be one of A.G. Lafley's potential successors as CEO at P&G, will leave the company next year, according to the Wall Street Journal. Healy is the group president of North America Selling and Market Operations. She's been with P&G for nearly 25 years. The announcement comes after a recent shakeup of P&G's senior management. 7 Cincinnati suburbs were included on the list of the top 50 small towns and villages in the U.S. Wyoming, Montgomery, Springboro, and Madeira in Ohio, and the Kentucky suburbs of Edgewood, Fort Thomas, and Villa Hills on the list created by Business Insider. That list was created after data was compiled on nearly 300 suburbs with populations between 5,000 and 10,000 residents within 40 kilometers of a metropolitan area. The National Association for the Advancement of Colored People plans to tap Cincinnati for its 2016 National Convention if a site visit next month goes well. NAACP representatives will be here Wednesday through Friday. That convention is a major political event. Well, with only days left till the election, many investors are curious what impact these important midterms might have on stocks. In this week's U.S. Bank Economic 360, U.S. Bank Vice President and Senior Portfolio Manager Mike Denevan talks with Business Courier editor Rob Dawmeyer about the influence the election has on the market. Mike and Rob.
Thanks, Peg. And Mike, thanks for being here.
Good morning.
As Peg just said, obviously this is a very, very important election for a lot of different reasons, these midterms. But how do elections typically impact the market?
Sure. So naturally we get a lot of questions about that. You know, most of them along the lines of what outcome will be best for the market. And it seems to be oddly that the answer is that the market is indifferent to who actually wins. So there have been studies done and analysis that have shown that the market tends to focus less on the outcome of the election so much as the election itself. So, you know, you're right, very important elections, and the outcome will influence economic policy and tax policy, and these things down the road will influence the market. But in the very near term, it seems that the market tends to focus more on the event itself rather than who gets the most votes.
So let's talk about that event, because the market has been on quite a roller coaster ride here of late.
Yes.
Does that roller coaster ride have something to do, you think, with the election?
It does. It does. We do know that as the election gets nearer, the market tends to get more volatile, and that pre-election day corrections are actually fairly typical. And I think the reason for that is pretty straightforward. The market does not like uncertainty, and elections are by their nature uncertain events. And certainly that uncertainty is magnified the nearer we get to the election with all of the political ads, with the news coverage. So you know, there's no doubt that the volatility has increased recently. I mean, in October, the market was all over the map.
Yeah, sure was.
I don't think you can point to the election as the sole reason for all of that, but certainly it was one important factor that played into what was actually a pretty disruptive month.
Yeah, after the election's over, what do you think? Where do you think the market is headed? I mean, is volatility something we should get used to?
Well, so here's some good news, and that is that once we get past the election, the market tends to perform pretty well. Again, not tied to the outcome,
right,
but rather simply that the election's behind us. So if we look at how the market has performed following previous midterm elections, if we look at just the last 5, for instance, the 12-month period following Election Day had an average gain of 16%.
Wow.
And in fact, we have to go all the way back to 1946 to find a similar 12-month period following the election where the market was actually negative.
Wow.
So that's a pretty strong track record.
Sure.
So as you mentioned, hopefully the market has all of the volatility out of its system and actually is poised for a pretty nice run here once we get the votes counted next week.
Good. So we won't go back to 46. That's just what we have to keep talking about. No 46.
No promises.
That's right. Thanks very much. Peg, back to you.
All right, thanks, Rob and Mike. Another timely topic. Well, still to come on U.S. Bank Business Watch. Speaking of elections, we are honored to be joined this morning by Cincinnati Mayor John Cranley. He's not on the ballot, but there are no shortage of topics to discuss, so stay with us. And after Election Day, consider attending the Cincinnati Tech 2014 Annual Big Breakfast and Startup Showcase. It's from 7:30 to 9:30 a.m. at the Duke Energy Convention Center. Hundreds of entrepreneurs, investors, and friends of Cincinnati's vibrant startup community will be there. You can visit the Business Courier website for more information. In this morning's Business Insight, last year at this time, Cincinnati elected a new mayor. John Cranley celebrated on election night 2013 and then quickly got down to business. From hiring a new city manager to battling over the streetcar to considering what to do with the budget surplus, the mayor has been busy. We're happy to have him with us this morning to talk about his first year as mayor and to look ahead to the future. Mayor Cranley is with Business Courier publisher Jamie Smith in the studio. Gentlemen.
Thanks, Peg. Mayor, thanks for being here today.
It's great to be with you.
So this time last year, you were closing up the campaign, finishing your debates. A year later, what'd you think of your first year?
This city has got real momentum, positive business activity. Crime is down, although not down as much as I'd like, but making progress. We're seeing the momentum in downtown and over the Rhine just accelerate, and we'd like to spread that success to our neighborhoods, but there are a lot of very positive trends, and I feel very good about where the city is.
Well, good. Tell me, what are you the proudest of in your first year? I know there's so much to do, and you have a lot of projects that you're trying to, try to get started or wrap up. What are you the proudest of for your first year?
Well, I think it's not finished yet, but the one sort of existential threat to the city was the pension crisis, and we haven't solved it yet, but we adopted a framework in federal court where we're working through a solution. Hopefully we'll get one soon that will put that issue behind us with a fair and balanced solution that I think is fair to all parties and will allow the city to balance its budget, restore its credit rating, and get our fiscal house in order. So I think that was a huge deal, and it's one of those things where you'll never know how bad it could have been, but it could have been really bad if we hadn't addressed it and it had been neglected for years. And one of the things that I did when I got elected was I tried to tackle all the toughest issues first, streetcar, parking deal, pension, getting more cops on the street, ending brownouts, all of which we did, and getting the first structurally balanced budget in many years, trying to sort of put out those, what I would call fires that were left for us. Right. So that we can focus on the positive agenda of just job growth, enhanced safety, a better inclusion approach to the city, and improving the quality of life in neighborhoods.
Okay, you just named about 4 things there. Are any of those top priority for next year, or are they all fairly equal?
I think every day I try to say, how are we going to grow the economy? How are we going to improve safety? How are we going to make this city more inclusive? How are we going to bring performance measurements to whether your building permit, whether your snow removal, whether the courtesy of your police and firefighter, the efficiency of road paving. We want, and Harry Black, the new city manager, is introducing performance management for all of our departments. So improving the efficiency of government service. And then lastly, looking for those big wins in neighborhoods to revitalize your Westwood Square, to make College Hill and North Bend and Hamilton pop. I just had a tour this morning at Madison and Wetzel and Madisonville, Walnut Hills. These neighborhoods, these great historic neighborhoods that I think have been neglected for too long, that have huge potential and a lot of excitement, could see the same kind of rebirth that we've seen in downtown.
Sure. I was fortunate enough to be on a trip to Atlanta with you a couple weeks ago with the Chamber. What do you think, if we're out in another city, what's our strong point? What are we selling about Cincinnati? What do you think the top thing is?
Well, we're the best city in the world. I mean, if you think about having the more Fortune 500 companies per capita than any city in America, and the fact that the city's small enough that you can get your arms around it, quality of life, cost of living. You know, if you're a young entrepreneur and you're trying to start a business, you can get access at the highest levels to the leadership of P&G and Macys and Kroger and dunnhumby and Great American and Western Southern and Cintas and all these great companies in a way that you never would be able to in a big city. But other cities our size don't have that kind of corporate depth. So we have an economy that is going to continue to grow. Then you look at the rebirth of our downtown and over the Rhine, and the quality of life of urban living is very high. Our park system, most cities, the core area that is our city, don't have the kind of strong neighborhoods that we have, and that are getting stronger every day. So, you know, frankly, this is, if you want to, this is the best place to be, period. Yeah. If you want to follow your dreams, raise a family, pursue your business goals, this is the place to do it.
Well, there's so many, you know, new businesses opening up, and I mean, I live in Clifton and drive down Vine Street every morning to work, and it's so exciting to see the facelifts, to see the new businesses opening up, and I just hope it continues. Now, your name's not on the ballot this week. Any insight? Any big things you think are going to happen with the election?
Well, I certainly hope that my my good friend Charlie Lucan gets elected probate court judge. I'm working hard for that, and you know, other than that, I'm not going to make any predictions.
All right. Well, listen, I hope to have you back on the show again, you know, sometime into next year. But again, wish you luck, and thanks for everything you're doing for the city.
Thank you.
Thanks for being in. Peg?
All right, thanks, Jamie. And a special thanks to Mayor Cranley for making time for us this morning. And of course, thank you for joining us this morning for U.S. Bank Business Watch. We'll be back next Sunday and every Sunday morning at 6:30 here on Local 12 and 10 a.m. on the CW. For more business news all week long, you can visit the Business Courier online and sign up for daily emails and follow on Twitter and Facebook. The address is CincinnatiBusinessCourier.com. I'm Peg Rasconi. Have a great Sunday.